right. So in order to keep the lines clear, we ask that you mute yourself by using the *6 feature on your phone. You can then press *6 again when you want to unmute. If you're new to this meeting, we welcome you. There's going to be time at the end of the meeting for fellowship and to share contact information. This meeting is being recorded. Good evening, everyone. Today is Wednesday, May 15th, 2024. My name is Michelle S. I'm a recovered Al-Anon and will be leading this meeting. We want to welcome everyone to our Al-Anon Big Book Recovery meeting. This is a step speaker meeting that meets every Wednesday night at 5:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time or 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We will study the 12 steps by using the precise instructions out of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous as they relate to us as Al-Anons to get our meeting started. This is the original AA preamble written by the AA Grapevine, describing the fellowship in 1940. We study the preamble with an open mind and open heart to consider how it applies to Al-Anon. This helps us to stay focused on the message of recovery the pioneers intended while observing the traditions in action. Through the actions taken based on the instructions of the basic text, we comprehend what the pioneers meant when they described the membership of AA, which is that they worked a program of recovery and they no longer drank. In our case, we no longer obsessed over the alcoholic. Through continuous action and study of these principles, the understanding of the value of the original preamble reveals itself. We ask for your humble consideration of our sincere admiration of the pioneers of Alcoholics Anonymous. The simple hope is that we of Al-Anon will grow in the same clarity and unity that birthed the original 12-step fellowship, because without them, after all, none of us would be here. This is the original AA preamble. We are gathered here because we are faced with the fact that we are powerless over alcohol and unable to do anything about it without the help of a power greater than ourselves. We feel that each person's religious views, if any, are his own affair. The simple purpose of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous is to show what may be done to enlist the aid of a power greater than ourselves, regardless of what our individual conception of that power may be. In order to form a habit of depending upon and referring all we do to that power, we must first apply ourselves with some diligence by often repeating these acts. They become habitual and the help rendered becomes natural to us. We have come to know that as alcoholics, we suffer from a serious disease for which medicine has no cure. Our condition may be the result of an allergy that makes us different from other people. It has never been permanently cured by any treatment with which we are familiar. The only relief we have to offer is absolute abstinence, the second meaning of AA. There are no dues or fees. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. Each member squares his debt by helping others to recover. An Alcoholics Anonymous member is an alcoholic who, through the application of and adherence to the AA program, has forsworn the use of any and all alcoholic beverages in any form. The moment he takes so much as one drop of beer, wine, spirits, or any other liquid containing alcohol, he automatically loses all status as a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. AA is not interested in sobering up drunks who are not sincere in their desire to stay sober for all time. Not being reformers, we offer our experience only to those who want it. We have a way out on which we can absolutely agree and on which we can join in harmonious action. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our program. Those who do not recover are people who will not or simply cannot give themselves to this simple program. Now, you may like our program or you may not, but the simple fact remains that it works and we believe is our only chance to recover. There is a vast amount of fun included in the AA fellowship. Some people might be shocked at our seemingly worldliness and levity, but just underneath there lies a deadly earnestness and a full realization that we must put first things first. And with each of us, the first thing is the solution to our alcohol problem. To drink is to die. Faith must work 24 hours a day in and through us, or we perish. In order to set the tone for this meeting, I ask that we bow our heads in a few moments of silent prayer and meditation, followed by the Serenity Prayer. And if you'd like to join me in the Serenity Prayer, you can hit *6 to unmute. Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Thy will, not mine, be done. I wish to remind you that whatever is said at this meeting expresses our own individual opinion as of today and as of up to this moment. We do not speak for AA as a whole, and you are free to agree or disagree as you see fit. In fact, it is suggested that you pay no attention to anything which might not be reconciled with what is in the AA Big Book. If you don't have a Big Book, it's time you bought one. Read it, study it, live it, follow the directions in it, and learn what it means to be an AA. If you don't have a Big Book and you'd like to follow along, you can always access one online for free at aa.org. Or you can just listen. That's fine too. A sponsor is anyone who has had a psychic change as a result of working the steps and has the willingness to work with others. For those looking for a sponsor to guide them through the steps, please stay tuned and have your pens ready to record phone numbers immediately after the meeting. Each OA group ought to be a spiritual entity having but one primary purpose, that of carrying the message to the Al-Anon who still suffers. This is our primary spiritual aim. Our job as a group is to provide people with a place to learn about and work the steps. It has been our experience that working the steps consistently provides us with a better, saner life. We consider all else to be an outside issue. This includes personal problems. The proper venue for sharing such problems is with a sponsor. This is, after all, where real recovery takes place, in working the steps with a sponsor. We are just so glad we are all here, and we are all here because we are all not there. There will be a period of fellowship after the meeting. If you have questions, you need a sponsor, if you need to check in or get current, or you just want to discuss other literature, please stick around for the fellowship. That would be a better time for these subjects. So this is a Wednesday step speaker meeting. So the first Wednesday of the month, I covered steps 1 through 3. Last week, I reviewed those steps and then covered 4, 5, and 6. Tonight, I'm going to do a review of the first 6 steps, and then we will additionally cover steps 7, 8, and 9. So if you turn to page 59, the steps are in the Big Book. And step 1 is that we admitted we were powerless over alcohol and that our lives had become unmanageable. The reason we study the Big Book and we study the steps is to understand the alcoholic, okay, and also to understand our own 12-step program. With the alcoholic, they have a body and a mind component to this illness, okay? So when it says we admit we are powerless over alcohol, that's the body component, which we don't have. And the powerlessness is that once they start drinking as an alcoholic, their body doesn't metastasize alcohol like other people. And what happens is it ignites their phenomenon of craving, and they're powerless to stop. They just keep drinking. Even when they don't want to, they can't stop. We don't have the body component, but we do have a mind component, though. And our mind component shows up when we try to control the alcoholic. So, for example, ask yourself, can we get out of the alcoholic's way and just let them live their life, however that looks? Or do we need to keep tabs on them? Do we feel we have to nag them, yell, cry, manipulate, whatever it is, to try and get them to do what we think they need to be doing, instead of, letting them reach their own rock bottom? And that can be hard. So if we're doing those kind of things, it may be that we have a mind that doesn't let us leave the alcoholic alone. And like I said, that can be really hard to do. But can we leave them alone, even if it means that they might not make it? They might pass away. I know that happened to my loved one. Al-Anon taught me to leave my loved one alone, because I don't know what their path is or what their relationship with their higher power is, and that's not my job to interfere with that. A lot of times it comes across like we're trying to help, right? We want to help them out, but we really aren't. We're just giving them an easier, softer way, which just kind of ends up making things worse. And a lot of the time, we might be using it as a way to avoid working on our own stuff, right? If we're focusing on somebody else, then we don't have to take that look in the mirror. Or it might be that we don't want to be inconvenienced by them or embarrassed by them. But when we do these things, we're really just getting in the way of what they need to do. And so with an alcoholic, as I mentioned, just to review step one, they have a body component. Once they start drinking, they're powerless to stop. Their mind component is that they can't stay stopped. So if they swear off alcohol and that they're never going to drink again, their mind always takes them back. So their mind always says, you know what, I think I can handle it this time. Or that sense of ease and comfort that they're going to get from that drink wins out over willpower every time. And even though they know it's not a good idea to drink, they go and do it anyway because they're just thinking of that sense of ease and comfort. For us, we just have that mind component. Step two says we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. So notice it says restore us to sanity. It doesn't say fix or cure the alcoholic. That's not our job. And in order for us to get started on step two, we just need that little bit of hope. That's what step two is. A little bit of hope that it might work for us, right? We don't have to have 100% faith. Sometimes with step two, we get hung up on the higher power spiritual program. Like, oh, I don't want that. I'm good. No thanks. But the thing of it is if what we're doing is working, that's fine. But if what we're doing isn't working, and that's why we're on the line, step two is also about being willing to look at things and do things differently, putting aside what we think we know, putting aside everything that we've tried that hasn't worked, and being willing to do things differently. So, for me, I saw that my sponsor had peace and sanity in her life, regardless of what was going on around her. And I wanted that. And I really thought, because I was going to church at the time, that I had this religious, spiritual thing down, but I didn't, because what I wasn't honest about was, if I was being honest, when I came to Al-Anon, I was really agnostic because I wasn't letting God work in my life. I didn't know how to do that. And I was just trying to control things in my life. And I mean, it may have started with the alcoholic, but it certainly bled into other things in my life. situations at work, all kinds of things with friends and family. But that little bit of willingness is all that I needed to get started. Not a religious program. It's a spiritual program of recovery. And if we're on the fence about it, because this program works whether you're religious, agnostic, or atheist, all right? We don't have to have any of that stuff figured out. We just need to have that little bit of hope and just start working the steps. And that's all we need to get started, and that's all we need with step 2. In step 3, it says we decided to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. That as we understood Him, I think, relates to step 2 as well, because it's our conception of a higher power. I use God a lot because it's in the book, but it can be higher power, the universe, whatever your conception of a higher power is. It just has to be something eternal and outside yourself. And so it doesn't have to be this, conception of God that you grew up with that you don't agree with anymore. The first 3 steps are decision steps. And they're about hope and willingness that's eventually going to lead into believing. We're not going to know how to do that. We're going to learn how to do that by working the rest of the steps. We're not going to know how to turn our life and our will over to the care of God. We're just making a decision to do that, right? We are going to know how to break that habit we have of kind of going over and over stories in our head, and leaning into this story that we have, like, oh, they took the car and they've been drinking and, they're going to get in an accident or get arrested or whatever the case may be. They said they're at work, they're not at work, I got to go check the local bars. That sort of story in our head is what, we tend to lean into. We're going to learn how to instead lean into our higher power and what our higher power would have us do. The steps teach us how to lean into our higher power versus that noise in our head. And by doing that, by working these steps, that is how we can have peace and sanity around us, regardless of what someone else is doing. And that is what I really wanted, because what I had been doing for so long hadn't been working for me. Instead, it was driving me absolutely crazy, and I didn't want that anymore. And I was sick of it, and I was just willing to do whatever my sponsor told me to do to get some relief, because I didn't want to do it anymore. I was exhausted. It's exhausting to, try and control everything and keep tabs on someone and try to work their program and try and figure out what they're doing. I was exhausted. The first 3 steps, like I said, are decision steps. And it's where we have our spiritual experience, where we turn things over to a higher power. For some people, that might be enough. And if that were the case, then going to church would have worked for me, but it didn't. I also need a plan of action. A spiritual experience is not enough for me. And that's what this program is. It's a spiritual experience and a plan of action. To get you connected to your higher power, it's going to solve your problem for you. So step 4 is we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. So fearless moral inventory, that means we're looking truthfully at ourselves. And we do this so that we can look at the things that are cutting us off from our higher power, right? Sorry, I just lost my place here, guys. Okay. So we're looking at the things that are cutting us off from our higher power. And so we're going to be looking at things differently than we have. We're kind of looking at it through a different lens. So, for example, when we're resentful, when I would be resentful and come home from work and play these resentments over in my head, that took up a lot of space. It took up all the space in my head, really. So there wasn't any room for anything else, and I certainly couldn't hear God. When we do this inventory, we do a honest and thorough job. Now, by thorough, it don't mean we're writing our memoir, because that's another way that we dwell on self too much. It is to go on and on about the story. If we go to page 63, it says, next we launch out on a course of vigorous action, the first step of which is a personal house cleaning, which many of us have never attempted because we were too busy blaming the other person to really look at ourselves. Though our decision was a vital and crucial step, it could have little permanent effect unless at once followed by a strenuous effort to face and be rid of the things in ourselves which have been blocking us. Our liquor was but a symptom. We had to get down to causes. So trying to control things, control the alcoholic and what they're doing is just a symptom. It's really not the problem. On page 64, it says a business that takes no regular inventory usually goes broke. Taking a commercial inventory is a fact-finding and fact-facing process. It is an effort to discover the truth about the stock and trade. One object is to disclose damaged or unsaleable goods to get rid of them promptly and without regret. If the owner of the business is to be successful, he cannot fool himself about values. So if you had a store, or at least I had a store, if something was old and had been on my shelf for a really long time and wasn't selling, I would get rid of it and put something new or different or something that people might want to buy, right? I just wouldn't keep the same old junk around and hope that it was going to work. And it's the same thing. We're taking that same action in our lives when we do this inventory. We're looking at it from a different perspective. Instead of blaming the other person, we're looking for our role in the problems in our life. Where were we wrong? What was our role in the situation? And then on page 64, it says resentment is the number one offender. It destroys more alcoholics than anything else. We start with resentments when we do our inventory because we always know who we're mad at and why. And it also is deadly to Al-Anon, resentment. It really cuts us off from God really quickly. In dealing with resentments, we set them on paper. So we write down our resentments. We listed people, institution, or principles with whom we were angry. We asked ourselves why we were angry. In most cases, it was found our self-esteem, our pocketbooks, our ambitions, our personal relationships, including sex, were hurt or threatened. So we were sore. We were burned up. So in step 4, we're putting down all those resentments on paper. And, if you're thorough and you're honest, there's probably going to be a lot of them, honestly, because we do carry around resentments. Now, there might be things, really terrible things that have happened to us throughout our life, and that was not our fault, and those things happen, and what was done to us was wrong. We're not at fault for something terrible that was done to us. However, if 15 years later we're still stewing about it, that's what our role is, because that's not helpful. Some people might have the luxury, I guess I would call it, to hang on to resentments. I don't. I don't have that luxury because it makes me crazy, and then I drive other people around me crazy. So I can't hold on to that resentment. I have to deal with it on a day-to-day basis, not just when I do my fourth step. I mean, yeah, this is your fourth step. You do that when you come to program, but I also have to do that every day. It's not like you work these steps and then you're done and you get a certificate. I have to look out for resentments all through my day. And, later on, next week I'll get into what we do when we have those resentments, because we are human. We're always going to have them. That's not going to change. But I have to deal with them in a different way. I can't just go and sit with my friends and complain about, the people in my life who are awful. That doesn't work for me. I don't have that luxury. I have to go deal with that in a different way. When we're done with our resentments, we move on to fears. On 67 and 68, it says, notice the word fear is bracketed alongside the difficulties with Mr. Brown, Mr. Jones, and the employer and the wife. So when the book lays out exactly, how we do a fourth step. And this short word somehow touches every aspect of our lives. It was evil. It was an evil and corroding thread. The fabric of our existence was shot through with it. It set in motion trains of circumstances which brought us misfortune, which we felt we didn't deserve. But did not we ourselves set the ball rolling? Sometimes we think fear ought to be classified with stealing. It seems to cause more trouble. We reviewed our fears thoroughly. We put them on paper, even though we had no resentment in connection with them. So fear is something that's different. Fear is something that usually is associated with something that we think we need that we're not going to get, or something that we have that we're going to lose. And fear, it robs us of joy. If we're sitting around worrying about things that may never happen, that we don't have any control over and can't change, it certainly robs us of joy, and the others around us too, because what our actions affect the others around us, whether we like to admit that or not. On page 69, it says, in this way we tried to shape a sane and sound ideal for our future sex life. So the last part is the harms that we've caused others in romantic relationships. We subjected each relation to the test. Was it selfish or not? We asked God to mold our ideals and help us live them. We remembered always that our sex powers were God-given and therefore good, neither to be used lightly or selfish, neither to be despised or loathed. When we are done with our fourth step, we meet with our sponsor and work our fifth step. In our fifth step, we admitted to God, to ourselves, and another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. We work this step with our sponsor because sometimes, we can't see what our role is, where we were wrong. And our sponsor is going to help us see that. As I mentioned in the first three steps, our decisions steps, or the first three steps, which are decision steps that lead to willingness, which leads to believing through action, doing the work. Most of us are the type of people that need a plan of action, not just a spiritual solution. So our sponsor helps us to see where we were wrong when we can't, where, what our role is. Because sometimes we're just not able to see that. We kind of are used to looking at things through our own selfish lens, how they hurt us, what they did to us. The step 5 isn't an easy step. On page 72 and 73, it says, this is perhaps difficult, especially discussing our defects with another person. We think we have done well enough in admitting these things to ourselves. There is doubt about that. In actual practice, we usually find a solitary self-appraisal insufficient. Many of us thought it necessary to go much further. We will be more reconciled to discussing ourselves with another person when we see good reason why we should do it. The best reason first is if we skip this step, we may not overcome drinking, or in our case, our obsession over the alcoholic. Sometimes just sitting down and maybe journaling and writing down all this stuff without having that honest, a sponsor to keep us honest sometimes doesn't work. We need to go a little further. We need to have someone help us out who, when we can't see what we've done wrong. And there was something else I was going to say, but it went out of my head. I can't remember what it was, so I'll just move on. It says this is perhaps difficult, especially discussing our defects with another person. We think we have done well in admitting these things to ourselves. There is doubt about that. In actual practice, we may find a solitary self-appraisal insufficient. Many of us thought it necessary to go much further. We will be more reconciled to discussing ourselves with another person when we see good reason why we should do so. The best reason first, if we skip this vital step, we may not overcome drinking. Time after time, newcomers have tried to keep to themselves certain facts about their lives. Trying to avoid this humbling experience, they have turned to easier methods. Almost invariably, they got drunk. So we can't hide stuff anymore because secrets aren't good for us. We don't have the luxury to hide things. We have to be honest, but we aren't beating ourselves up about every horrible thing we did, because that isn't helpful either. Having persevered with the rest of the program, they wondered why they fell. We think the reason is they never completed their house cleaning. They took inventory all right, but hung on some of the worst items in stock. They only thought they had lost their egotism and fear. They only thought they had humbled themselves, but they had not learned enough humility, fearlessness, and honesty in the sense we find it necessary until they told someone else their whole story. Oh, I know what I was going to say before, and it does relate to this. When we're telling our story to our sponsor, who is another Al-Anon who has worked the steps, who has been through this, there's huge value in that, because they're probably not going to be shocked by anything we say or what we think or how we feel or the things that we've done, because they've been there. They know what it's like. Okay. And there's huge value in that. And that gives us a unique ability when we get recovered to go out and help another Al-Anon and who's suffering, because we've been there. We know what it's like to be in the trenches with an alcoholic in our life. I'm just checking the time here. Okay, so after we work our step 5, page 75, it says, returning home, we find a place where we can be quiet for an hour, carefully reviewing what we've done. So, usually 5th step takes a while to work, and you go through a lot. So it's really a gift to be able to take that hour and just be quiet and review what you've done, connect with your higher power, and spend that time with God. And so step 6 says we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. So on page 76, it says we have emphasized willingness as being indispensable. Are we now ready to let God remove from us all these things which we had admitted are objectionable? Can he take them all, everyone? If we still cling to something we will not let go, we ask God to help us be willing. Okay, so this is important. It says that first sentence we have emphasized willingness. So as I mentioned before, there is a definite difference between someone who is willing, who's saying, hey, I want to let go of these resentments and I do feel better, but I need help, you know, versus someone who's like, no, I'm justified in my anger. I want to feel this way and I'm going to feel this way. Those are two different things. If we want to hold on to anger, it tells us what to do, which is that we continue to pray to ask God to help us be willing, because at some point we're going to be willing to let it go because we're not going to be able to, deal with it anymore. But if we are willing, just don't know how yet, but we're willing, step 7 says that we humbly ask him to remove all our shortcomings. And when we're ready, we say something like this. I know I said the 7th step prayer, which is, my Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go from here to do your bidding. Amen. So it says, I am willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. So that's an important point because, we're human and we are going to have strengths and we're going to have weaknesses, and that's going to continue throughout our life. We don't work the 12 steps and then, become Buddha or something. We're going to be valuable. And we always have our Creator to help us through that, to take all of us, good and bad. On page 75, it says we pocket our pride and go to it illuminating every twist of character, every dark cranny of the past. Once we have taken this step, withholding nothing, we are delighted. We can look the world in eye. We can be alone at perfect peace and ease. Our fears fall from us. We begin to feel the nearness of our Creator. We may have certain spiritual beliefs, but now we begin to have a spiritual experience. The feeling that the drink problem has dispersed will often come strongly. We feel we are on the broad highway walking hand in hand with the Spirit of the universe. So it takes time to practice these principles. Some people just have an easier time letting go of certain things. But when we practice these principles, it says we begin to have a spiritual experience. That means that we are beginning to learn how to live differently, how to live in a way that gives us peace and sanity and meaning in our lives. Getting out and helping others instead of feeling like a chore or a burden will grow to become a joy in our life. Step 8 says we made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. So page 76, now we need more action, without which we find that faith without works is dead. Let's look at steps 8 and 9. We have a list of all persons we have harmed. We get that from our inventory that we did in our step 4 and 5, and to whom we are willing to make amends. Now, it says willing. So we're going to work on our amends list with our sponsor. Just because we're willing to make an amends with somebody doesn't necessarily mean that it's a good idea to do that. And when we just get recovered, we're going to work closely with our sponsor on how to make an amends and when to make an amends and when not to make an amends. I know I divided my amends list into like ones I was going to do right away, like the easy ones, usually like your family, like your mother, father, or spouse, or whoever it is who's going to love and forgive you probably no matter what. And then your more difficult ones, and then your maybe or never ones. So the list, we made it when we took inventory. We subjected ourselves to a drastic self-appraisal. Now we go out to our fellows and repair the damage done in the past. We attempt to sweep away the debris which has accumulated out of our effort to live on self-will and run the show ourselves. So we're repairing the damage, okay? That's an important key. We're not going to cause more damage, and we don't make amends to appease our guilty conscience. We're making amends to the other person, for the other person, not for us. Our whole point is to make the amends for that other person. If we haven't the will to do this, we ask until it comes. Remember, it was agreed at the beginning we would go to any lengths for victory over alcohol. I don't know if I talked about that, but that's part of your third step. You know, are you willing to do whatever it takes to get relief from this insanity? That's an important part of step 3. Okay, what else do I want to say about this? How we make an amends is different. So it's different than an apology. In an amends, what we're doing is we're looking at where we were wrong. You know, we simply state what we did. We don't go out and go, started this Al-Anon program, and, unless the person asks why we're doing it, we don't tell them, because that can make it seem like we're only doing it because, we have to for our program. We simply state what we did wrong without, it was wrong of me to do this, but, you were being really annoying. That's not an amends. We simply state what we did wrong, stating a character defect. Usually it's selfishness, but, it was selfish. I regret my actions. What can I do to make it right? So it's a very different approach than, hey, sorry about that. And when we approach someone, if, say, we owe someone money, we should be prepared to pay that back. We don't, make an amends and go, hey, I'll catch you later on that. We should be prepared to listen to what they have to say. I think what my sponsor had put on the amends was to, zip it and listen to what the other person has to say. And unless they're asking us to do something that's illegal or immoral or something like that, we make every effort to make those amends to other people. And yes, usually after an amends, we do feel better, but keep in mind, no one has to accept our amends. They can tell us to go pound sand. That's out of our control. Our job is just to show up and to make that amends and let the chips fall where they may, okay? Once we make that amends, how that person reacts is out of our control. We're just here to set right the damage that we have done and caused. Because that's part of what cuts us off from our higher power, because we tend to then, if we don't make right our wrongs, then we go home and we stew about it. And then we start to do all the things that we don't want to do, getting over involved in what the alcoholic's doing or other people in our lives because we don't want to deal with our own stuff. So it's an important step. It's not necessarily an easy step or a fun step, but it is a necessary step. And regardless of how the other person responds, we can get a lot of peace and a lot of freedom from making an amends. Step 9 says, may direct amends to such people whenever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. Oh, to go back to, we make every effort to find and track down the people that we need to make amends to. That's the willingness part. Now, some people may not be alive anymore, or maybe we can't find people from 20, 30 years ago. That happens, but we make every effort to find them. So back to step 9 is that we go out and make direct amends. So direct amends means that we're going to go out and meet this person face to face, eye to eye. We're not going to, send a text or an email. Sometimes, we may have no other option but to call. But whenever possible, we make that face-to-face amends. For a lot of reasons. Sometimes things can get misunderstood in emails or text, but also it helps the other person to see us face to face, to see our sincerity, and it also helps us to see the harm that we've done when we meet that person face to face. And again, we don't make an amends when to do so would cause more pain. And that's when we're going to work closely with our sponsors. So I get this one a lot from people that I sponsor, that they want to, the first amends that they want to make is always to an ex, which is normally a very bad idea. The person may have moved on with their life, may have, spouse, kids. We don't need to be going in and mucking around in that. It's almost never a good idea to contact exes to make amends. So if we go to page 76 and 78, it says probably there are still some misgivings. As we look over the list of business acquaintances and friends we have hurt, we may feel diffident about going to some of them on a spiritual basis. Let us be assured, to some people we need not and probably should not emphasize the spiritual features on the first approach. I mentioned that before. That's just, it takes away from the amends if we're like, oh, hey, yeah, I got to do this as part of my Al-Anon program. We might prejudice them. At that moment, we are trying to put our lives in order. But this is not an end in itself. Our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and the people about us. It is seldom wise to approach an individual who still smarts from our injustice and announce that we have got religious. Yeah, that's the other thing is like, your life might be great, but I still am struggling with what happened between us. So in the prize ring, this would be called leading with the chin. Why lay ourselves open to being branded fanatics or religious bores? We may kill a future opportunity to carry a beneficial message, but our man is sure to be impressed with the sincere desire to set right the wrong. He is going to be more interested in a demonstration of goodwill than in our talk of spiritual discoveries. We go to him in a helpful and forgiving spirit, confessing our former ill feelings and expressing our regret. Under no conditions do we criticize such a person. Simply we tell him that we will not get over drinking until we have done our utmost to straighten out the past. We are there to sweep off our side of the street, realizing that nothing worthwhile can be accomplished until we do so, never trying to tell them what to do. His faults are not discussed. We stick to our own. If our manner is calm, frank, and open, we will be gratified with the results. So, we're not going, sometimes it can be hard. I'll put it this way. Sometimes it can be hard to go to make an amends to someone that we feel wronged us more than we wrong them, right? We usually think that we have less responsibility in situations, particularly with the alcoholic, because it's really easy to blame alcoholics for stuff. And it's really easy for us to feel, superior because, I'm not the one who's drunk and can't control their life. It's kind of a lie that, we tell ourselves that maybe we're not alcoholics, but how much better are we doing at looking at our own issues, at keeping our own side of the street clean, It's like having a bunch of garbage in your yard and complaining about the neighbor's trash. I can remember I needed to make an amends. I'll give an example. I needed to make an amends to my youngest brother, and I really didn't want to do it. He had struggled a lot of his adult life with drugs and alcohol, and I really felt that he had wronged me more than I had wronged him. So really worried about making an amends to him. I didn't know how it was going to go. But again, these fears and not wanting to do things are luxuries that I don't have. So, my sponsor helped me. And I had to wait to make an amends to him because we had kind of gone a couple years without talking, and I hadn't seen him in person. He hadn't come back home to visit or anything, and I was finally gonna see him after a couple of years, and so it was an opportunity that I needed to take to make that amends face to face, rather than just, I'll do it another time. So I made my amends to him, and it went, much better than I thought. It was funny because he kept cutting me off and going, no, we're good. Don't worry about it. And I was like trying to make this amends and trying to do it, just perfectly. But it was good in that it helped improve our relationship. We did not become best friends after that. But it opened the door to communication for us and to, it helped me to see him as a human who was struggling with his stuff. And while I might be feeling superior, how grateful and lucky am I that I didn't get the alcoholic gene. I don't really like alcohol. I never have. I never got that gene, and how fortunate that I didn't get that gene, because had I, it'd probably be no different than him. And, I can remember it was about 9 months later, we were talking, and he had called me, and he normally didn't call me. And so I talked with him, and I, knew things weren't going well, but having a program of recovery, I have a plan for that. And, I remember the last thing I said to him was, if there's anything I can do, let me know. And I love you. And that was the last time I ever spoke to him, because he died 2 weeks later from his illness. And that happens. And that opportunity that I had to face-to-face make amends with him was the one and only opportunity that I was given. And I'm grateful that I took it, because it led to some healing between us, so that when he did pass, I didn't have all these thoughts in my head of guilt and remorse. I didn't do more. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. I wish I had talked to him. I wish I had. Because once somebody leaves this earth, that's it. There's no opportunity to meet with them and make it right. That ship has sailed. So, when we have that opportunity, it's important to take advantage of it. Okay, so that was 7, 8, and 9. And I just lost my script here. Yeah, bear with me just 1 minute. Next week, we are going to finish up the steps. So we're going to review the steps like I did, and then we're going to add steps 10, 11, and 12. All right, seventh tradition. Every group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. This group does not have a payment structure in place and currently requires no overhead expenses. If you would like to fulfill Tradition 7, please direct contributions directly to the Al-Anon World Service Office by visiting alanon.org. For questions about this meeting, you are looking for a sponsor, please send emails to alanonbigbookrecovery@gmail.com. Recordings can be accessed on YouTube by searching at Al-Anon Step Speaker in the YouTube search box. If you are interested in other Al-Anon meetings that follow the Big Book, please visit alanonbigbooksolutiongroup.org. From the Big Book, page 164, our 10th step promises, our book is meant to be suggestive only. We realize we know only a little. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. Ask Him in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the man who is still sick. The answers will come if your own house is in order, but you obviously cannot transmit something you haven't got. See to it that your relationship with Him is right. Great events will come to pass for you and for countless others. This is a great fact for us. Abandoning yourself to God. As you understand God, admit your faults to Him and your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you. Until then, let's have a moment of silence for the Al-Anon who still suffers, followed by the Lord's Prayer or a prayer of your own choosing said in silence. And if you'd like to join me in the prayer, you can hit star 6 to unmute. Prayer. Who loves us and keeps us sane. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses. We forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and ever. Amen. All right, I'm going to turn the recording off.